Good morning. Morning Musings by Melinda. Happy Friday. Long weekend ahead of us. I hope you're planning on relaxing. So there'll be no musing on Monday because I'm planning on relaxing through Tuesday. In the Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield, he talked about the 4 control dramas in order to teach spirituality. It was the 2 passive control dramas and the 2 aggressive control dramas. So it was aloof and poor me, and that were the passive dramas, and then there were aggressive control dramas that we will be discussing on Tuesday, because again, in spirituality, we are learning about how we interact with each other as human beings. That's our process in learning on planet Earth. It's Earth School, and so today I wanted to talk to you about codependence. Now, codependence are created in a household where there are things that are out of control, either an alcoholic household or someone in the household that's a rageaholic, or someone in the household that makes a child feel like they're walking on eggshells all the time. So the child becomes a chameleon and becomes that which will bring the least amount of attention to him or herself, creating something called codependency. Now, this is a subject that's really a big subject, and so there are different types of codependency. On a morning musing, I don't have time to get into every type of codependency that there is. But basically, codependency is a disease of not knowing one's self. And therefore, codependents are often coupled up with narcissist, because the narcissist is all about the narcissist and the codependent is all about the narcissist. And this doesn't just happen in romantic relationships. This can happen in other relationships too. Friendship, mother and child, boss and employee. You know that The Devil Wears Prada was all about that codependent, narcissistic energy between a boss and her employee. So we're not just talking about romantic relationships, we're talking about how to understand what you're doing with your own energy if you're a codependent, or if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, what that means to you. I just wanted to go over my homework with you because it's some really interesting stuff. But again, I'd be teaching a class on codependency coming up. We have to get our classes together, and it will be done on the computer on Zoom, so that if you are out of state, you can attend the class too. So both the codependent and the narcissist have poor relationship with themselves as individuals. The codependent has learned to put others first and to minimize their own needs. The narcissist is just the opposite. He or she places him or herself above all others with the goal of a relationship as one of exploitation to get needs met. But the codependent wants to meet other people's needs, because that's the dance between the codependent and the narcissist. The codependent wants to be approved, get approval all the time. So they try to fix things, and sometimes in their trying to fix things, they are difficult to get along with, the codependent, because they kind of try to fix things before they happen, or second guess somebody else's needs or whatever, because they're so accustomed to being a codependent. So if a codependent is not in a relationship with a narcissist, the codependency becomes a problem rather than the narcissist becoming a problem. So again, there are different types of codependence. There's control codependence. There's codependents that have low self-worth. In Melanie Beattie's book, Codependent No More, it really talks about how codependency works really, really well. But basically, the signs of codependency are taking responsibility for someone else's actions, worrying or carrying the burden for other people's problems, covering up to protect others from reaping the consequences of their poor choices, doing more than is there required at work at home to earn approval, feeling obligated to do what others expect without consulting one's own needs, manipulating other people's responses instead of accepting them at face value, being suspicious of receiving love, not feeling worthy of being loved, a relationship that's based on need and not mutual respect, and trying to solve someone else's problems or trying to change someone. So that's basically, that's a core of what codependency is. There's so much more to it. But basically, the codependent and the narcissist do this dance together that's kind of a match made in heaven, even though the codependent is miserable. Again, if the codependent is not in a relationship with a narcissist and they come from a family where they have become codependent, then they will drive somebody else crazy with their codependency because the other person that feels stifled by the codependency. Okay, so let's talk about, does brain chemistry change somebody when you're in a relationship with a narcissist? Again, without getting into a huge amount of detail, because this is only a morning musing, the answer is yes. Because there is two prominent neurochemicals linked in traumatic bonding. That's the dopamine and the oxytocin. So these two chemicals in the brain get changed in a relationship when you are in traumatic bonding, okay, a traumatic bonding. And that even means, again, in childhood. So if you have unresolved childhood trauma, that chemistry in your brain is off. It becomes deregulated. And as an adult, you cannot have a normal relationship until you really go back and re-identify what happened in your childhood. If you had a narcissist or you became codependent as a child or both, then you have to look at what that is, because then what that creates is intense craving and wanting of the narcissist. In other words, when the narcissist moves out of a relationship, the codependent goes crazy and gets into this feeling of getting off drugs, actually. It's just an addiction in its nature. So there's a withdrawal from the codependency, just like there would be a withdrawal from drug dependence. So the abusive partner then becomes the drug. So, that's it in a nutshell. And again, in a morning musing, too much to talk about, but so much to talk about. So if you feel that I have given you some insight into some of your relationships, either that you have some codependent tendencies or you have some narcissistic tendencies, which people have said, am I a narcissist to me? And I came back on yesterday to say, no, if you ask that question, you're not a true narcissist. But if you have narcissistic tendencies, then absolutely look at those tendencies and reframe what you're doing with someone. We all have a little bit of control issues as human beings. I mean, holy cow. I mean, here we are on the earth plane right now. We're all in a really high anxiety state because of what's happening with the pandemic. So it's not fair to compare who you are in the now to who you really are. So take a look at that. So the book for today would be Codependency, No More. Again, my favorite guy is Charles Whitfield. He has written Healing the Child Within, as well as a book on codependency. And next Tuesday, we're going to start Interrogator, Intimidator, Aloof, and Poor Me. I don't think I mentioned those in the beginning. I apologize. On the 4 control dramas, Interrogator, Intimidator being the aggressive, and Aloof and Poor Me being the passive. Join me on Tuesday morning. Have a great weekend.